Hello, my lovely sewer rats. It's your bestie Summer. I told you guys I'd be posting again, but I guess I probably do need more than 2 videos to prove that, but I swear I'm not gonna die again. Anyways, the warnings will be in the description, and without further ado, Chapter 2 of Unseen Bond, a Salvis fanfiction written by pissxcaca, read by Summer Audio. The next morning came, and Sal followed his routine as usual. After getting ready, he headed to school, this time walking alongside Larry and Chug. The chill in the air hinted at winter's approach. Frost clung to the edges of windows, and the breath of the trio puffed out in small clouds as they walked. In moments like these, he found himself oddly thankful for his prosthetic, which provided some warmth against the cold. Sal was already lost in his own thoughts, barely registering the murmured conversation between Larry and Chug behind him. He couldn't shake the frustration from yesterday. Todd's advice, while well-meaning, had fallen flat this time. He had turned to him hoping for a solution, something to hold on to, but came away empty-handed. Just like with everyone else. How could this be so difficult to figure out? The problem nagged at him, refusing to be ignored. Letting it go wasn't an option. Not for him. Sal nearly let out a sigh of frustration. It was hard enough trying to help someone who didn't want it, and even harder when that person was Travis. He knew Travis didn't deserve his efforts, not really, but he couldn't shake the need to help anyway. In truth, helping Travis had become more of a distraction, a way to keep his mind off the unsettling paranormal events he had witnessed. At least with Travis, the situation, though far from ordinary, was grounded in something real. No ghosts, no murders, just something he could try to fix. What choice did he have? It was like finding a wounded animal on the side of the road. He couldn't just leave it there. He had to help, no matter how difficult it might be. Even if that animal lashed out, snapped at him, or digging its claws deep into his skin, he couldn't just turn away. He was yanked from his thoughts by a gentle tug on one of his pigtails. Glancing up, he saw Larry walking beside him, a smirk on his face. "Dude, are you even listening?" Larry asked, his tone half amused. "Oh, sorry," Sal mumbled, feeling his face heat up with embarrassment. "What were you two talking about?" he asked, hoping to catch up without giving away how lost in thought he'd been. "We wanted to hang out after school. You in?" Chug replied, his words muffled by the candy bar he was still chewing on, crumbles falling from the corner of his mouth. "Of course," Sal replied, a hint of a smile in his voice. "But I've got to pick up my medication after school first. I'm almost out of my dose." Larry nodded. "No problem. We're gonna ask Ash and Maple later, too." He glanced ahead, already thinking about how to rope the others in. The school's hallways packed with students as soon as the first bell for break rang. The voices echoed off the walls, and the crowd moved like a slow, chaotic wave through the corridors. Sal had just come from the art class with Larry and Ash, a subject he liked but didn't consider his strongest. He was decent enough and genuinely enjoyed it, but both Ashley and Larry were far more skilled. Instead of feeling jealous, though, Sal admired their talent, finding inspiration in their work rather than competition. Now in the bathroom, Sal was scrubbing at a few drops of red paint splattered across his prosthetic and hoodie. They had been assigned to create unique backgrounds in art class today, and he decided to go for a bold red one. Unfortunately, his plan backfired when the acrylic paint splattered everywhere after a brief struggle to open the bottle, leaving him with more paint on himself than on the canvas. It had only been a few hours, and Sal's day was already off to a rough start. The paint refused to come off with just water stubbornly clinging to him. He chuckled quietly to himself, realizing he looked like he'd walked straight out of a brutal crime scene. Thankfully, the bright red splatter didn't look too realistic, more of an art class mishap than anything truly serious. Sal washed his hands in the sink and tossed the last paper towel into the trash. Just as he was about to leave the bathroom, he heard the door creak open. It was Travis. The tall blonde paused in the doorway, his eyes narrowing when he spotted Sal standing in front of one of the sinks. His natural expression shifted into a deep scowl, instantly souring the atmosphere. Sal noticed the way Travis clenched his teeth, hesitant for a moment before deciding whether to step inside. God damn it. Travis cursed under his breath as he finally stepped into the bathroom, his irritation visible. He moved to the sink next to Sal and turned on the water, scrubbing his hands, clearly trying to shake off whatever had bothered him. Sal stood still, carefully observing what Travis was doing. As he did, his gaze drifted to Travis's face. He noticed the swollen lip and the dark bags under his eyes, which were nearly as dark as his eyes. Sal also saw that his black eye was slowly fading, giving him an unexpectedly more peaceful appearance. Sal couldn't help but wonder how Travis had ended up with that swollen lip. It looked like he had been hit hard or slapped in the face, prompting Sal to consider two possible scenarios. Either Travis had gotten caught up into a fight with another troubled kid, or this was a result of his difficult home life. Of the two possibilities, Sal hoped he was right about the first one. The thought of Travis facing any kind of turmoil at home unsettled him more than he cared to admit. "Are you done staring?" Travis said suddenly, his voice low and almost growling. He dried his hand with some paper towels, glancing sideways at Sal. "Is there something on my face, or are you just looking for trouble?" Sal shook his head, raising his hands in defense. "No, you're all good," he replied, keeping his voice calm. "It's just your lip is swollen. Looks kind of painful." Travis scoffed, clearly annoyed. "Thanks for the obvious, freak," he said sarcastically, glancing at Sal's paint-streaked clothes. "You've got a little something there, too, but you don't see me complaining." "Geez, sorry, man," Sal said, catching a glimpse of annoyance creeping into his own voice. "Didn't mean to bother you." Travis rolled his eyes in response, his frustration evident as he turned to leave the bathroom. "Well, you did," he said bluntly, walking away from him. "Travis, wait a second," he said, trying to keep him inside the bathroom. "Are you doing all right?" There was a hint of genuine concern in his tone, breaking through the tension between them. Travis halted at the door, clearly taken aback by Sal's unexpected question. For a moment, he seemed at a loss for words. He opened his mouth as if to respond, but then quickly shut it again, frustration flickering across his face. Without another word, he stepped out and disappeared through the door. Sal stood there, feeling a bit disappointed. He wasn't surprised by Travis's reaction. He had expected even worse, but it still stung that he refused to talk. The silence between them felt heavy, a reminder of the walls Travis had built around himself. How was he supposed to break through that barrier? Sal understood that Travis didn't trust anyone who wasn't close to him, but how could he possibly get close to Travis if Travis wouldn't even talk to him? Feeling disappointed, he walked out of the bathroom and made his way down the hallway where Ashley and Larry were waiting for him. After his failed attempt to reach out to Travis, he honestly wasn't in the mood to talk. The weight of the encounter still hung over him, and he wasn't sure how to shake it off. "Finally, you're here," the tall brunette complained, relief coming from his voice. "What took you so long?" "The stupid paint wouldn't come off," he replied, annoyance creeping into his voice as he tugged at his shirt to get a better look at the stubborn stains. Ashley chuckled. "Yeah, we can see that." "You okay, though?" Larry asked, his voice tinged with concern. "I just saw Travis leaving the bathroom," he added, his smile disappearing and slowly twisting into a scowl. "Why wouldn't I be?" he asked, confused. "Dude, I've already told you, he hasn't done anything recently. You've been mentioning him so often, it sounds like you're obsessed with him." It was ironic coming from him, considering how much Travis had been on his mind lately. Larry snickered sarcastically. "Me? Obsessed with Church Boy? Good one," he said, giving Sal a light pat on the back. "Can we please talk about something else?" Ashley sighed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Like what?" Larry asked, casting a curious glance down at her. "My new necklace! You guys like it?" she asked, smiling as she tugged the chain forward to reveal an amethyst pendant. The purple stone caught the light as she showed it off to the two boys. "I can't believe neither of you noticed," she teased, faking a pout. Sal's eyes squinted in a grin. "It's really pretty, Ash. Totally matches your dress," he said, nodding in approval. "Thanks, Sal," she said with a warm smile, glancing down at her dress and back at him. "I'm glad you noticed the color match." "Where did you get it from?" Larry asked as he leaned in to get a better look at the necklace. "From a little market near my street," she replied. Larry nodded, understanding, his gaze still lingering on the necklace. PE was Sal's least favorite subject. He didn't mind exercise in general, but doing it with a prosthetic that made catching his breath nearly impossible was pure torture. Today, their teacher had them run 10 laps around the entire gym. Sal had barely made it halfway through his 6th lap when he had to stop. Stepping aside as a group of boys raced past him, the prosthetic felt suffocating, but the thought of taking it off only made things worse. He knew the other kids were already starting to whisper behind his back with judgment in their eyes, and he wasn't about to give them more reason to. He usually had PE with Todd, which made things easier for him to tune out the stares and whispers, but with Todd sick this week, the judgment felt even more intense, leaving him anxious and on edge. Sal wiped the sweat from his neck and headed over to the bench, searching for a moment of relief from the pressure. The only thing he could look forward to was Travis. Luckily, Travis was in his PE class as well, not that it mattered much. PE with Travis had always been annoying. He would hurl harsh comments at Sal and target him during every game. However, after they had worked through their issues, more or less, the class had become peaceful. Sal watched as Travis powered through the 10 laps despite his usual unmotivated appearance. PE seemed to be one of his stronger subjects. It made sense with his impressive grip and undeniable strength. He excelled in physical activities. Sal couldn't help but recall the punch Travis had thrown last week. He definitely didn't hold back then. The teacher whistled sharply, calling everyone to gather around. Sal made his way over to Travis, hoping for a nod or some sign of acknowledgement. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, but Travis didn't even glance his way. Instead, he kept his gaze fixed ahead, seemingly oblivious to Sal's presence. The silence hung awkwardly between them. As he watched Travis, he noticed the drops of sweat dripping down the side of his face. The usual slicked-back blonde hair had become a bit messy, a look that Sal found more fitting for him. "All right, everyone," the teacher began, capturing the class's attention. "Since many of you have been asking me to play soccer, that's exactly what we're going to focus on this month." Sal could already see how this was going to unfold. All the boys would take the games far too seriously, while the girls would barely participate. He despised this kind of dynamic. It felt more like a competition than a chance to enjoy themselves. No one seemed to be playing for fun, and that made the whole experience even more frustrating to him. "Before we start, everybody's going to do a 10-minute warm-up. Everyone grab a partner and get a soccer ball. You'll be passing the ball back and forth until time is up. Ready? All right," the teacher said, blowing his whistle again to signal that it was time for everyone to find a partner. Sal glanced around, pretending to search for a random partner. Normally, he would have teamed up with Todd for these activities, but with Todd out sick, his eyes fell on Travis. Bonding over sports could be a good idea, he thought, hoping it might ease the tension between them. After a deep breath, he approached Travis. After all, this was a chance to break the ice and maybe even build some sort of friendship. He just hoped Travis wouldn't brush him off like he always would. It wasn't like Travis had much of a choice anyways. He was almost universally disliked by their grade, and no one could overlook his temper. Meanwhile, Sal was seen as a freak by nearly everybody as well. In a way, they both shared that burden of social isolation, which made teaming up feel like the least they could do. "Hey, Travis," he said, trying to sound casual. "Want to partner up?" Travis's eyebrows quickly knitted into a scowl, his signature expression, "Whatever," he replied grumpily, clearly unimpressed with the idea of partnering up. "Cool," Sal mumbled with a hint of excitement in his voice despite Travis's grumpy demeanor. Sal picked up one of the soccer balls lying on the ground and took a few steps back. He set the ball down carefully and glanced over at Travis. "You ready?" "Just kick the damn ball," Travis replied, his voice cutting and irritated. Sal started kicking the ball towards Travis, sending it rolling across the gym floor. Travis stopped it with a swift motion and kicked it back. They continued the routine, passing the ball back and forth in silence. Each kick lacked any real energy or enthusiasm, but they stuck with it, repeating the motion over and over. The rhythm between them gradually smoothed out, though neither spoke, both too wrapped up in their own thoughts to break the silence. As the time neared its end, Sal trapped the ball under his foot. "Let's take a break. I'm still out of breath from those laps," he admitted, not bothering to hide his exhaustion. Travis merely shrugged, showing little interest or concern. Sal picked up the ball and tossed it into a large metal basket with the rest of the equipment. As he turned to walk away, a sharp "fuck" echoed across the gym. He whipped around and saw Travis hunched over, gripping his nose with both hands as blood dripped between his fingers. His face twisted in pain and anger. A few feet away, two boys stood laughing under their breath, their smirks barely hidden. "Sorry, man," one of them muttered, though his tone was anything but genuine. The other boy gave a mock shrug, still chuckling as if it were all just a joke. Travis rushed out of the gym and into the boys' locker room, trying to keep the blood from dripping onto the floor. Sal watched as the gym teacher scolded the two boys, and then decided to follow after Travis. He pushed open the locker room door and made his way to the bathroom. There, he found Travis hunched over one of the sinks, carefully rinsing the blood from his nose, his expression a mix of frustration and pain. "Are you okay?" Sal asked, concern creeping from his voice as he stepped closer. "What happened?" He glanced at the blood swirling in the sink, unsure if Travis would even bother answering. "Isn't it fucking obvious?" Travis snapped, his voice slightly muffled as he held his nose. "They kicked the ball right into my face." His tone was sharp, laced with frustration as he continued dabbing at the blood. "Why did they do that?" Sal asked, his voice tinged with worry despite Travis's anger. A knot tightened in Sal's stomach as he watched Travis dispose of the blood. The tall blonde rose from the sink, shoving 2 wads of paper towel up his nose. "Because they hate me?" he replied irritably, his voice muffled by the paper plugs. Sal couldn't suppress a grin beneath his prosthetic at the sight. "Aren't you angry?" he asked, striving to keep his voice steady. "Jesus fuck," he snapped, irritation flashing in his eyes. "Stop asking me these stupid questions. Of course I'm mad." Sorry, Sal said, holding his hands up in a defensive gesture. "I just thought, I figured you'd be the one to snap at them. I'm not stupid, he said, brushing past Sal with a dismissive glance. "I'm not about to start a fight with the teacher nearby." "Oh, yeah, you're right," Sal replied, a nod of understanding crossing his face. That definitely made more sense to him now. Travis walked back into the locker room, and an awkward silence settled between them once more, neither of them willing to break it. Sal hated the tension that hung in the air, but he felt powerless to change it. He knew Travis was already annoyed by his questions, even though he had only intended to express concern. The silence felt heavy, intensifying the unease that crackled between them, leaving Sal to wonder if he had pushed too far. "Does it still hurt, though?" he finally dared to ask, his voice barely above a whisper. "Do you need anything?" "Yes and no," Travis muttered, yanking the paper wads from his nose. "It's not like it's gonna leave a bruise or anything." "That's good," Sal replied, a hint of relief in his voice. The tall blonde tossed the paper wads into the trash, then lingered for a moment in front of the door, his back to Sal. The silence stretched between them, and Sal could see him grappling with his thoughts, brow furrowed in concentration. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he turned slightly and asked, "Why do you care so much?" The question hung in the air, laced with vulnerability. Sal tilted his head in confusion. What do you mean? You just... He paused for a moment, searching for the right words. You act like you care about me, and I don't get it. Why do you do that? I've been nothing but mean to you. I mean, hell, I was mean to you just a few seconds ago. His voice softened, revealing confusion and frustration. Dude, I've already said it before. I don't think you're a bad guy, Sal replied, his tone steady as he tried to reassure him. He wanted Travis to understand that he wasn't holding any of his harsh words against him. I just don't get why it's so hard for you to accept that. Is it really so wrong for me to care? He paused, searching Travis's eyes for any hint of understanding. Travis, on the other hand, squinted his eyes in disbelief. No, he muttered, his gaze fixed on the ground, avoiding Sal's eyes, or rather, his one eye. I'm just not really used to it. His voice was low, as if admitting a vulnerability he hadn't intended to share. Sal felt a flicker of hope spark within him at Travis's words. Sure, what he had just said was undeniably depressing, but the fact that he was finally opening up created a wealth of possibilities. Had he finally begun to let his guard down? The thought filled Sal with excitement, realizing that this moment could lead to a deeper connection between them if Travis was willing to take that step. Travis paused at the door, his hand tightening around the handle as he bit his lip. He stood there for a moment, wrestling with himself before muttering, "Forget what I just said." His voice was low, the walls he'd let down already rebuilding themselves. "No, wait," Sal protested, reaching out as if to stop him, but before he could say another word, Travis had already stormed out of the locker room, the door slamming shut with a loud bang. Sal stood there, disappointment washing over him. A moment ago, he'd been sure he was making progress, that Travis had finally started to open up. Now, with the door slammed shut and the room quiet, it felt like everything had reverted back to square one. The hope he'd clung to now seemed distant, leaving him feeling stuck in the same place as before. Sal left the locker room behind Travis, pushing his lingering thoughts aside as he rejoined the class and went through the motions, trying to focus despite the nagging frustration in the back of his mind. To Sal's surprise, the rest of the class went surprisingly well. They played a few games of soccer, and the atmosphere was lighter than he had expected. Even Travis included him in the game occasionally, passing the ball his way and at times speaking to him in full sentences. It wasn't much, but it felt like real progress. Maybe Sal had been right after all. Maybe things were finally starting to improve. Sal shoved his gym clothes into his backpack and slung it over his shoulders. He always waited for the other boys to clear out of the locker room before changing. No matter how hard he tried, he just never felt comfortable around them. He stepped out of the gym building where the gang was already waiting. Ashley spotted him and waved. "Over here," she called. "About time you showed up, man. We're freezing," Larry muttered, trembling as he crossed his arms lightly, trying to hold in a bit of warmth. "Stop being such a baby," Maple scoffed. "It's not even that cold." "Sorry, guys," Sal apologized. "Changing took longer than I expected." With that, the gang left the school campus. Secretly, Sal felt a quiet sense of satisfaction about the progress he had made with Travis today. It wasn't a big breakthrough, but for him, it was a significant step forward. Beneath his prosthetic, a faint grin tugged at the corners of his mouth. One he didn't even realize was there. Maybe, just maybe, their friendship would improve from now on. He sighed softly, a quiet release of tension he'd been holding in all day. Surrounded by his friends for the first time in what felt like forever, he allowed himself to relax. Things might not be perfect, but for now, they were good enough. And that was Chapter 2 of Unseen Bond by pissxcaca on ao3. Make sure to go check them out. And I just found out that I have rat claws on my shoulder. I guess I was playing with my rat a bit too much. But anyways, So my mom came out because I'm in my car at my aunt's house. So but I don't feel like re-recording that because I've had to re-record so much this chapter. By the way, apologies for not doing that much voice acting and not having the tones be that correct. Still getting used to reading out loud again. Also, sorry for the background noises. Again, I am literally sitting in my car because I have, again, at my aunt's house, and I don't feel like trying to read in there, plus the fact that my family very much would not approve of this story because they're Christians, and this is a fucking gay story with a lot of swearing in it. So yeah, as much as they not accept me, but tolerate me, they definitely wouldn't tolerate me, reading this, especially not out loud. Probably, like, reading it, but not out loud, especially not with all of the kids in there, but yeah, because, yeah, I have, like, 4 siblings, and 2 cousins in there, so, you know how my family would get, woo, God, if my friends ever find this, they're gonna know exactly who I am. But that was the end of chapter 3 of Unseen Bond on ao3 by pissxcaca, and I'm never gonna get used to reading that. This is chapter 3 out of 17 chapters, with 93,000 words. And there will be more chapters to come. Like, this isn't a finished fic. But yeah, and I will see you guys on the next one. Bye bye.